Go. Welcome back, everyone, to Ladder League Recaps. This is the Week 3 recap and the Week 4 predictions. I'm joined with a special guest this week. Welcome, Wazzip.
Hello, everybody.
And I just want to jump right into it because it was a very, very exciting week. And the ladder is definitely thinning out now. We're down to just 4 rungs at this point, but I'll throw it back to Week 3 real quick to talk about the Week 3 recap. It was rung 1 was our first match, Anorak, Bricko, and Laser. And I think Wazip, this one beat us for the worst race in the entire ladder so far. We had our week 1 rung 3 match that was considered, I think, probably the most boring race of the ladder at this point. But this one might have beat it because this one was over after Godfraud. Anorak kind of had a normal Godfraud, everything was going well for him. And then Bricko restarted the level, I believe, at lap 2, like towards the end of lap 2, missing the trigger, and then Laser having to restart twice, which I think that is a first for Ladder League, which is kind of just a scary thought as someone who does Godfraud. I don't want to have to restart the level twice. And then the race was kind of over from there. Laser also had some like monitor issues, if I remember correctly. His like screen was tearing and it was terrible and everything was laggy. And I think you can obviously see he gets a 226 because of it, but I'm not really overreacting to that time too much. And then Bricko, the rest of his run was all right, but once again, the big pod race reset pretty much set him back. And then Anorak came in with another solid time. Anorak is going to qualify as a 3 seed, which maybe is a surprise to some people, maybe not to others, but he's been honestly one of the most consistent runners in the tournament so far. I think it's a very deserved 3 seed. Bricko kind of just having a bad moment and a bad time and a bad moment. He's been so good this tournament, and unfortunately still is not in the top 8. I guess my initial reaction is, Anorak, a very deserving 3 seed, as I had mentioned. Bricko, it's a second place. I don't think it's any concern, right, because the Godfraud missed, but Bricko didn't, I guess the thing is we were kind of waiting for a moment in this turn where Bricko kind of falters, and we see how he runs off like a bad falter, and it was not great. He managed it, but once again, a 221.57, take away the pod race mistake, it's still like a 219, 220, or I'll say 219. It's, beatable. And he's been really solid in these other weeks. And Laser, I'm not going to overreact to this because it was just a really off week for him. I wouldn't imagine missing Godfraud twice would have anyone getting any half decent run. I guess Wazip, I'll throw it up to you. Do you think, obviously, what is your reaction to like Anorak getting the 3 seed? And then what do you think about the Bricko and Laser times? Is this like fluky, or do you think maybe it's a little cause for concern?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the Anorak 3 seed, I think it's definitely a bit of a surprise. Not that he isn't capable of getting the 3 seed, but more so just like how soon he qualified. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's just the fact that we expected to see it maybe in like seed 5, seed 6, but the fact that it's seed 3 is kind of remarkable and really just, says how much work Anorak has put into it. In terms of Bricko and Laser obviously just having one of the worst starts you can have to any run,
Yeah.
basically ever. Um, and having to continue that, I mean, it's hard when he's dealing with the monitor issues on top of it, which has been an ongoing thing. I mean, I know he's had controller issues with it, but dealing with monitor issues as an additional thing, it's definitely not going to be like
Mm-hmm.
anything to, really, what am I trying to say here? Like, it's just not a good look, basically. But
Yeah.
he has worked through it and figured out what works best for him. So we'll kind of see how it plays out for Laser, but I don't think we're gonna see any other run that's above even a 23. I would
Yeah,
say for Laser.
I'd agree. I'd
And
agree.
then yeah, and then like for Bricko, I mean a sub 222, I would take it, but in terms of what we expect for Bricko, it's uncharacteristic but also understandable given how just bad his start also was. But I don't think it's much of a concern. I think he'll just bounce back. Well, I mean, we'll see in this next week just how well he can against the other two. But especially with the competition he was against here, it's definitely a surprise that he did not play as well as we expected him to.
Yeah, I guess the whole Bricko thing is I am curious as it goes on because surely it doesn't go perfect for Bricko every single
Hmm.
run. But is it like obviously everyone's a bit of a momentum player in their own, so like some more than others, like Jared, Charizard, way more than say
100%.
Zach, Evan. But Bricko, who I consider maybe on the side of like, he is a very consistent runner. he did show a little falter, with the bad start, but once again, who
Hmm.
wouldn't? I am curious though, next time he has a little bit of a falter early on, if he's able to recover for it or from it, if it's not a God Fraud thing, I should say, or maybe
Right.
it's just like a normal God Fraud miss, like a minute time loss or a 30-second time loss. We'll see how his recovery is versus, maybe a bigger disaster. But interesting for Bricko
Hmm.
as the tournament goes on. And I'll move on to what was probably, I think, the best race of the week, rung 2. I guess
For sure.
looking at the other rungs, it wasn't really that crazy, but rung 2 was definitely a really good race between myself, Zach, and We Super. And this one, I actually, I guess, yeah, since I was in it, I can kind of give you the runner's perspective. I did not watch this one at all until the very end, until I tuned into the stream on my phone with a little bit of mobile delay, and I saw me and Justin were both doing bridge skip. And I was like, oh my goodness, what is going to happen? And as we hit the Falcon at almost the same time, but I knew a little bit. I was like, okay, my odds are probably worse, and that was the case. But, uh, you know, actually, a big difference between, second and third, with Justin going down to rung 3 and myself staying in rung 2. Zach, I think, the pre-race favorite there. He won, but, it's a 2:19:09 for Zach. Not his best showing. I know he actually missed God Fraud, like, for the first time I've ever seen that man miss God Fraud. Like, I know you're probably thinking the same thing, was like, when has this
Oh yeah.
guy actually ever missed God Fraud? And we saw it in a tournament match from Zach, and actually me and Justin hit it. Um, I'll actually yap about the race a little bit because I didn't really get to talk too much about it. It was actually a good race. I held the lead through, I believe, episode 2 until a little bit into 4. I lost my helmet to pilot spawns, and then I had a disaster DSE. And then Justin actually took the lead because Zach was still trying to recover from a really bad early game. And then Justin held the lead pretty much all the way until 5, and Zach performed the best episode 5 ever performed by anyone. Maybe there's an episode 5 RTA that's better there, but better than anyone else in a run, and especially really good to see in a no reset setting from him. And that just completely took the race away from me and Justin as I was creeping up a little bit, but definitely not as fast as Zach came back. And then it came down to really CCT investment between me and Justin. Justin was ahead into CCT, but had a DVT absolute disaster, which gave me the lead into DV3. But then I had a DV3 disaster, and then he retook the lead with the first try DV3. So he was about 20 seconds ahead into Bespin, and then he actually surprisingly does not go for modified GTF. I know it's like he's trying to learn it. He considers it more difficult, maybe a double controller thing, or I meant double
Hmm.
keyboard thing. But he ends up missing the it's elevator clip. That's what it's called. The missing elevator clip, losing his lead to me, and then it's pretty much even into the end platform. He's slightly ahead, but then missing deathless bridge skip, and I get it first try. Is the difference, the 3 second difference at the end, which determines rung 2 versus rung 3. Um, but a really good race overall. And I guess my reactions just real quick. Zach, right, that slightly slower time than we'd expect, but with the early disaster, I don't fault him too much. But you have to think, when will Zach start finally picking up and acting like the 1 seed, and starting to beat everyone by healthy margin? I'm not sure, and he's got a tough race next week. And if he can put on a good show like a 2:17 or something and get first place, I think Zach is back. He's got some momentum going into top 8. But if he doesn't, then who knows? I mean, Zach already being the 4 seed, I'm sure no one really anticipated him this far in. And I know he mentioned in his interview that like he just wants to get whatever seed possible. He just wants to make top 8. So I think he's got a good mentality right now. I think he should be set up for another win next week, but I'm not going to get too far into the predictions yet. And then myself, another not great performance from me. This one's a little different than my last one because last one was such a disaster in episode 1 that it kind of set a bad tone for the whole run. This one was actually a decent start, and then just an absolute disaster episode 4 and a bad episode 6, and then I actually picked it back up in the late game, but it was a little too much. I'm not really if I was a scene or better, I would not be particularly happy with the 2:20:46. So I'm not going to be too happy about that, but I think I can obviously do better. I did a run right after that, should have been a 2:18, ended up being a 19. And then I, whatever happened after, practiced a bit. So I'm not too concerned about myself, but that's me. Other people definitely can share the opinion that they might be a little concerned about me. And then there's Justin, who, another solid performance. I believe was slightly better than last week. I'd have to double check. No, slightly worse, sorry, than last week, yeah. But another 220 from Justin. He's definitely, I would say, kind of that fringe borderline competitor for top 8 right now. He obviously has a chance maybe to qualify earlier, but it seems like the wildcard match is destined for Justin at this point. And we'll actually look at the wildcard standings later. But I guess Wazzip, what was your reaction to this match? And I guess a little bit of like I think there's doubt on all three of these runners, and I guess what was your reaction, and how do you think all three of these runners will fare in the future of Ladder League?
In terms of Zach, I mean, it's just another surprising performance. Just you expect the world out of the guy, which
Hmm.
I believe in the interview after the match he mentioned like there's just been a lot of pressure being like the number one seed. Everyone believes you're gonna win each and every race, and he just hasn't been able to piece it together. Um, One of the things I was actually talking with my girlfriend about this because she allows me to yap with her about Ladder League, which I'm very thankful
That's
for.
awesome.
Um, I've mentioned that like this guy is known in the summoning salt video for be nervous later, and I
Hmm.
think that really plays a huge role in not even just Zach's gameplay, everyone's gameplay. It plays a huge role, but especially since he's kind of known for being the guy at the end of the video, known for being this really, really good player, but maybe he just doesn't have it in him when it comes to races. It's kind of hard to see, but it's not that there's that many question marks. It's just when is he going to figure it out is basically the
Hmm.
question at this point. So yeah, in terms of Zach, I don't think anyone's really worried unless he has a really bad performance this next week, which shouldn't be the case, but we'll just have to wait and see. In terms of you and Justin, though, um, I think the main thing is just Justin catching up with the times, really.
Hmm.
Because the reason he lost the race was GTF, essentially. If you want to boil it down to a certain point, him going with the old setup is basically just what costed him rung one. So now he's demoted down to rung three, and he has to play against two people that he's definitely much better than, I would argue. And in terms of you, I can't really. You're hard to pin. I will say
Hmm.
you are a hard person to pin when it comes to this stuff. I think you fare very well when it comes to races. It's just the competition you're against and the pressure of ladder league in general is just really hard to overcome at some points. But I mean, clearly it shows that you were able to come out on top despite all this pressure. You're caught up with the times for the most part, minus Pixel Disco. Um, but aside from that, like you're a very solid runner.
Hmm.
So although a 220 might not be what you want, it's still going to be a really good time and obviously good enough to beat someone like Justin.
Hmm.
So I'm not really sure how I feel about either of you guys. I think, especially for you, you can definitely qualify. In terms of Justin, he's like you said, I think he's a fringe player still, kind of down with like me, EJP, Laser, Colton. If you want to group us all together still at this point, I think it's definitely still a pretty tight race to see who can get in the wild card itself. But at least Justin, at least put up a much better time than his week one time. It seems
Hmm.
as though he's definitely hit a stride in terms of getting consistency at this point, I'd say.
Yeah, I apologize. I'm very hard to pin when I get a low 219, a mid 221, a high 220. It's really hard to like figure out where I'm even at, which I don't even know sometimes.
It's
Um,
what makes Ladder League fun, so don't
exactly,
don't
exactly.
apologize.
And I think everyone is kind of all over the board. You actually, and
Yeah.
I'll actually throw it over to you because there was a
Hmm.
really kind of all over the board player, Jared, in Rung 3 who put on a surprise performance, and I'll throw it over to you about Rung 3.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of this race, I think it was kind of just like mind-boggling to see someone
Hmm.
be on world record pace again. At least at the time, it was world record pace. I think going into today, we can kind of see it a little differently. But in terms of this race, in terms of rung three, it was definitely Jared was definitely like way above his weight class or way below. I don't know how you'd put it, but he
Hmm.
was definitely like the heavyweight champion going into this one. Obviously, being the winner of last season
Hmm.
against Colton and EJP, which EJP played really well. He played, I think, what was it like about 30
Oh,
seconds to a minute ahead of PB
he was
or
absolutely.
something like that.
I think he was about 30 seconds ahead into the best spin.
Into Bespin,
Yeah.
and then obviously had a very, very rough Bespin, which gave Colton a huge, huge crack in the door. Basically, kicked the door wide open for him after a certain point. But in terms of Jared's performance, like after the first 2 weeks, we didn't know really what to expect with the guy.
Hmm.
Um, But I think this performance clearly shows that Jared has what it takes still. Not that anyone really ever doubted him. But in terms of his performance, it was definitely like it was great to see. Like it's great to
Mhm.
see Jared when he's at his best because he very well has all the potential to get back into record, get back into top 3. Like he can make it happen. Um which I is he still top 3? I believe he is, right?
No, he's fourth
Unless
now. He's fourth.
yeah,
No, wait, is
he
he
did get
even
kicked
fifth?
out.
Oh, I know.
Oh.
Yeah, Evan, Zach, Dragon. I don't know if there's someone. Bricko. He's fifth now.
Rico, yep, there you
Yeah.
go. Yeah, so very, very tight at the top, as you can tell. But Jared still being able to put on a really good performance. So great to see that out of him. Colton, all that comes to mind, what was the main time loss? It was that Jabba's. That Jabba's where he just kept going for Spiderful on, I believe, the worst spider spawn, which he also had, I think,
Mhm.
about like 5 misses on R4 fly in that run as well. He just I don't know what it is about Colton. He does have kind of a mental issue when it comes to making one mistake where it
Mhm.
just keeps snowballing. We've mentioned it before,
Yeah.
I'm sure. Um, where he just can't recover. He it's like he's trying to tread on water, but he just keeps sinking because he's panicking. Um, where he just needs to focus on what he can control in the moment. For example, I think on that Jabba's, had he just played casual strats or how you used to do it, he would have been fine. But
Yeah.
it's the fact that he kept going for the fast setup, or what he assumed to be the fast setup. It just he wasn't able to recover after that point.
Mhm.
So in terms of Colton, he definitely has to figure out in this next week, especially going up against Justin, he has to figure out how to cut down on these major time losses because he's not going to be able to stack up against Justin with too many mistakes. Um, and then with EJP, I mean, he's going into elimination after this performance. However, he easily has the best performance. So it's like this run definitely showed that EJP has the potential for a really good time. So I guess I'll ask you, like, what are your thoughts on Jared? Really showing how good he still really is, and then how the other two fare against that.
Yeah, I guess for Jared, like what you were saying with Zach, it's like when is he gonna figure out? Because I know everyone like knows he has it there. It's like when is it gonna happen? And week 3 is when it happened. And there was actually like a conversation, just discussion amongst top runners, amongst really the community. It was like, was this Jared time because he had a low pressure race, and he was able to just come out of his shell and play like Jared, or is this just because he's woken up and he's going to be a menace in ladder league again, potential winner again? I'm not entirely sure. I think a little bit of both. I think because Jared is kind of the guy who I would put as he's probably watching the streams, and I think he's mentioned it before that he's up watching the stream probably almost the entire time. Looking at all the gaps, exits, which can help, but I personally don't like it, so I don't do it. But I think it can also hurt, and then I think Jared in this situation just has so much confidence going, and there's no nerves. So I think part of that plays a factor, but then again, Jared is just really good at the game. As you can see, he was basically world record pace until like episode 3. That it was bound to happen that he's going to get a good run in the ladder league, and I think it's a matter of can Jared stack these performances together. Because ultimately, when you get to top 8, you have to win 3 in a row if you want to win the tournament. You can't have any falters. You can't have a 220, 221, 223, whatever he's gotten before. You can't have that in top 8. Right now, he can kind of afford that early in the ladder, but now it's can we see him stack those sort of performances together? So we'll see next week. He's got a really high profile match between Brico Zach and himself. I'm more curious about the time that he gets rather than his placing. If he gets a good time, he gets third. I think Jared's back, and it doesn't matter that he got third. If he gets like a bad time and still gets a result from it, that might still be more concerning. I care more about the time than the result almost with Jared, just because I'm curious, if he's going to be able to keep up the performance. Obviously, 217.33 is a super high bar, but like if we see something like a 218, I'd still be happy. Even like a low 219, I think Jared's still in a much better spot than what he was putting up week 1 and 2. So I think a little bit of both between, I guess to answer my own question, you know, is this like a low pressure thing, and he's watching the stream and knows he's better than the other two runners, or is this a he's back thing? And I think it's both. In terms of Colton and EJP, man, I don't know when we want to talk about the wild card. I think we'll find a little bit of time later to talk about the wild card standings. But Colton with another 223 is a little concerning because, right, if we're thinking about wildcard average, Colton needs to kind of step up soon because it's not. I mean, how many more weeks do you think Colton has before he's going to start seeing the elimination rung? And then, he has no more time to get a better average. He doesn't have a great fastest time right now. I might as well, just for the sake of having it up, I'll open up the scroll bar just so people can look. Um, and we'll analyze it a little bit more deeply later in the recap. But yeah, Colton not even close with a 222 to the fastest time. So time is running out for Colton to kind of figure it out. We know he's got the potential. He's got two 219s already in the bag, maybe three. I think two though. So we know it's there. It's just, can he figure it out? He hasn't yet. And I guess that's the difference between someone like Jared and Colton. Jared's now figured it out and is in rung 1. Colton's in rung 3, and his average is not really good. EJP, man, I think this is kind of a tragedy for him just because he's now in the elimination rung. I feel like obviously I think we both think he didn't deserve it, considering PB pace into best spin. Literally it was gonna beat me and Justin's time from the rung above. Like if Jared hadn't had an insane time in EJP when I was winning the race, he could have leapfrogged, me and Justin, which is kind of insane to say. But then he ends up having that tragedy, and then he suddenly goes from, putting himself at as a really, I think he would jump into 7th best time above Colton, maybe even contesting that Justin 2:20.08 to suddenly way below, and then his average obviously is, in a similar spot to Colton's, where it just doesn't really help it at all. And that's another week gone, another, not hurt on his average, but he's got to do better if he wants to try to get that average spot. So it's really tragic for EJP, but like you said, that potential was completely shown up until the last level. So I'm not too concerned about him. I think he has a very winnable race next week, but now he's got to just lock in and he's got to grind it up from the bottom rung. It's totally possible, but as a fringe contender, it's going to be really tough road from here on out for EJP men. And I guess, yeah, I that's kind of my thoughts on that race. There's really not much more to analyze about it, so I'll throw you down over to your rung, which was a very interesting one. As you can see, you got the leapfrog.
My first win! Let's go, finally.
First ladder league dub. And I'll throw it over to you to talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, dude, it was such a sweet win to get because honestly, there was no pressure going into this race for me. Given, I'll just preface it with this. So, 10 minutes before the match, Charizard's still not in the call. He's still not ready to go. He's not awake at all.
Oh no!
For this match.
I didn't even know this happened.
And on top of it, Daime is on Zach's setup at the same time, so he's completely just like out of elements. He has a house full of people, in a different room, all just watching this match.
Yeah.
And there's like all this outside pressure for him, and for Charizard, he probably didn't even wake up until episode 4 properly. So for me, I guess I'll talk about the race at this point. Obviously, episode 1 is not my strong suit at this point. I think we've realized that with Godfraud, specifically lap 3. I think lap 3 has been like my biggest weak point when it has come to all of these races. I always either pause too early, or I think I've paused early every single time. I think this time I paused too late, if I'm not wrong, on the out of bounds.
Personally, I'm a late pauser. I prefer to miss it by pausing late. That's my preference.
Yeah, exactly. And then in the moment after I missed it, I was like, I guess I'll go for it again. What's the worst that could happen? And then tragedy struck. So in terms of early game, definitely my weak point. But I guess we'll talk more about the race. Charizard having a pretty commanding lead up until about Rebel Attack. In Rebel Attack, I think I was about 20-ish seconds behind him. And then going into Jabba's, he had the mistake where he popped in bounds after Droid Avoid, and he went past the first door where the droids are, which lost him, I think, a minute or a minute and a half or something like that, which then gave Daime the chance to also catch up. So from then on, from Jabba's until the very end, I just had all the lead. And then Daime had the hard lock in Chancellor. And from that point, Daime was just completely out of it mentally. I know Charizard was out of it mentally because he kept making these little mistakes and letting me just catch up. which was like for me, I didn't even I didn't check the stream until after Ep 2, and then once I saw that I was barely like a minute and a half behind Charizard, I'm like, okay, I'm back in the race. Like there
Mm,
was no reason for me to panic after that Ep 1 because my Ep 2s have been strong, my Ep 4s have been good, my Ep 6s have been strong. Three's a bit shaky. Like 3 and 5, I definitely leaked a bit of time. But knowing that I had the leapfrog in the bag practically into Ep 5, I wasn't concerned
mm,
about where I was gonna land. In terms of Charizard, though, I do know that he and Daime are not happy with these times. Very clearly not a good performance out of either one of them compared to what they are capable of. In terms of Charizard, I know he's been talking a lot about mental, and I'll let you get probably more into that in just a moment here. But Charizard's just been, struggling with the game as a whole, rather than just early game. Up until the halfway point, I'd say. And then in terms of Daime, I just know he hasn't had much time to practice, which is definitely shown in these performances. On top of being, 30 seconds behind out of negotiations. The guy just didn't really have a chance from the start. He just got really lucky that Charizard just kept bleeding time, but obviously it wasn't enough for him to overtake, on top of a bunch of other mistakes that Daime made throughout the entire run. So honestly, this race wasn't even that exciting, simply due to the fact that I just had a commanding lead, but it's my first win.
mm.
Mr. Potential right here finally had his moments, and leapfrogged Colton most importantly, to make it to rung 2. So I have at least 2 more runs in me before potential elimination. But I'm not even thinking that way. I'm thinking good way to just set the tone for the rest of this ladder league. Like I'm getting better each week is the most important takeaway I think, despite these awful early games that I'm having.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess I'll ask what you think of my performance, what it means for the future, and about Charizard's mental as well as Daime's.
Yeah, I guess I think the biggest thing to say is like the final times don't even like can't describe the race that happened because there was so much movement in the first half. There was so much going on, even in the second half, and like two 228s and even a 222 for you honestly don't even represent the level that anyone was playing in that race. Obviously, I guess I'll speak on Daime first, just because I was there with him in person. Obviously, I wasn't like over his shoulder. I was I was downstairs. He was upstairs doing the run. But Daime was having some problems with the setup. Obviously, it's a new setup for him. I think he had like he rebound control delete right below WASD. So he was constantly alt tabbing when he was trying to drop out. You probably didn't even catch it, but it happened like a ton of
Oh,
times during the race. And then obviously the hard lock may have been a setup thing. I don't actually remember what he said about that, but just like a bad situation for Daime. I didn't really love that he was running on someone else's setup, even though it's like Zach, right, who's like one of the best DCS runners of all time. I still, trust my own setup better than anyone else's, just for my own comfortability. So yeah, Daime, and I guess I'll speak on him before I move up to the other runners. Is he hasn't figured it out this tournament yet. His best time was week 1, and it's only gotten worse. And right, he definitely had a better race than a 228, and it wasn't a setup, but I mean, he's put himself in a position where he has to get a good time now because look who's in his rung. EJP man, who practically got a 220 last week. He's going to have to figure it out like now because it's do or die for Daime, and he's nowhere close to getting a wild card time right now. He's going to have to perform insanely. So it's going to be really tough for Daime, I think, from here on out, just to even stay in the tournament another week, let alone try to make it to like top 8 or something ridiculous. And then on Charizard, obviously he kind of has this like he's a super like the mentality thing is like a super momentum based guy. Early game, like he's got it down. Like early game, he plays up to the level of like top runners practically. But then I think it's just, and I used to have this problem years ago where you just keep trying to get really good early games, early games, early games, and then once you hit episode 4 and 6, something falters, right? Something falters, and then it just snowball, like you're saying, snowball, 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 and then the run's terrible, and then you're like, I suck at the late game. And even if you individually practice the late game, sometimes it doesn't do it justice. What I was telling him because he was asking for advice is literally just finish bad runs, because once you finish bad runs, that kind of shows you, okay, this is what I need to practice specifically. These are mainly my issues. And when you finish more runs, you get in those scenarios. Like I think it's important to be in scenarios like not just like an F5 RTA, but playing episode 5 in an actual run, it's slightly different, right? Mentally, I feel like you have to put yourself in those scenarios because once you're on a good run, once you finally get that perfect setup, once you get to F3 F5, it's just not gonna work out if you've not been there, So, but once you've been there a ton, even on bad runs, there's a good chance that you'll actually play decently. So I think he just got to put himself in those scenarios, which it seems like he's grinding runs and he's figured out that mentality today. We'll see if he can stick to that. Obviously, his race is tomorrow, so there's not much time to just fix everything. But we'll see how much he can fix before that race tomorrow. Because once again, I think Charizard's 222, 221 capable, which could even win the race. But he hasn't shown nearly that with a bad late game, bad late game, bad late game. Hasn't put up a good ladder league time because of it. But we know he's all capable of it, and it's really his last chance to do so tomorrow. And then, sorry, I'm yapping so much, I'm like losing my own breath. I'll move on to you, which I think once again, like I was saying with the other times, this doesn't even represent the level you played in this race, right? Because you had I believe 2 minute pod race disaster. I don't even know, but minute 32
And
minute.
I also missed ICS, so I lost
And
like 40 seconds
yeah,
in
so you were basically it was like a minute gap between Charizite and Daime, and another minute gap between you and Daime. So it was basically, let's just say,
Yeah.
2 minutes of time right there. Maybe even more, but like that's already alone 220 level run, low 220 level run, which obviously is like really important to see at this point. And I will like to give myself a little pat on the back because last week I said despite Jared and Wazzip having slow starts, for both of them being favorites here, this is a perfect opportunity for the bounce back race that they need to kind of put themselves on an upward trajectory in the ladder league. Because I think, with you and Jared, where you guys started in the ladder, you had that leeway that other people might not have had, and I guess Zach too. You had that leeway to have a couple bad races, but then still have the time to bounce back. And I think this is a big bounce back week for you specifically. And I mean, obviously this momentum, we'll see if it carries. I mean, you have a very tough match next week, but I think for you, it's almost like because you're on the fringe. Obviously, you definitely want like top two would be insane for you because that at least guarantee rung two next week, avoiding the bottom rung, or even just potentially rung one. Obviously, at this point for you, it's about getting the fastest time, fastest average. Qualification is obviously in your mind, but it's I think for you maybe you can speak on it. I think the wild card is maybe more your path to getting to top eight. Maybe run week
Definitely.
7. Obviously, you want to stay in as
Mhm.
long as possible, but the more runs you get in, like obviously you're on that upward trajectory, the more chances you get at the fastest time, the more chances you get to improve that average. So I think it's very, very big and important bounce back week for you, even despite the Godfrog disaster. And obviously, you've been doing runs on your own, improving in that. You like once again, and that's the thing is you were doing runs and like practically getting 219s, and then some sort of episode 5 catastrophe happens or something. It's
Yeah.
just something that's I don't know if the gods are just preventing you from getting a 219 right now, but it seems like you're right there. And I think even though you didn't really get an amazing ladder league time, I think that's the breakthrough, at least in ladder league, that upward trend, and I think you'll start playing well now. Of course, I'm like, oh, now he's playing me next week, of course, right? And he starts to figure it out. I guess I'm also on the other side of things where Laser had a disaster run, but you know,
Yeah.
I'm like, come on, why now? But I think Wazzip, this is a really good opportunity for you, especially to start making that push for top eight and the wild card. I mean, and you never know, it could be a qualification spot. You might sneak into a wrong one, maybe multiple wrong ones in the last couple of weeks, and have some qualification chances earlier. But yeah, I guess that's kind of my whole reaction to that match. It was kind of an interesting match to watch just because of the in person dynamic, and then obviously the
I would
lead flipping a
definitely.
lot early on. And I'll throw it over to you for rung five, the
Yeah.
infamous ladder league 1v1 now, I guess we'll call it, between Mello
Yeah,
and Coulson.
so really only looking at those top two names. But in terms of this race, I mean, going into it, Coolison yet just another person that Mello seems to have to be, David against Goliath here. Which I don't think anyone really expected Mello to make it all the way to week 4. I think that's kind of a testament, but not even that, to leapfrog
Yeah.
out of rung 5 into rung 3 to stay out of elimination and play against two really good runners, which we'll get into obviously once we get to the prediction part of things. But in terms of the race itself, obviously Coolison being a heavy favorite, he took a very commanding lead pretty much instantly. I don't really remember too much about the run itself, but it seemed as though Coolison handily took care of business, as he is a more I'd say risky runner compared to Mello.
Hmm.
Mello usually opting to go for the safer strats, as has been said multiple times at this point. But Mello not really being ahead up until about ITDS and Coruscant were the only two splits aside from the very end where he was ahead. So Coulson having the lead for pretty much 2/3 of the entire run, up until about let's see, Echo Base is where things kind of went wrong for Coulson and Mello kind of just took over, which then bled into Bespin, where Mello had a very commanding lead after a CCT meltdown for Coulson. And then from there, Coulson also had a soft lock on the panel for Bespin, which just completely took him out of the run at that point. Which at that point he already was kind of out of it, assuming that Mello hit GTF perfectly or just had a good Bespin, which he did. Clutched out the 225 with the 225.59, which is really impressive for Mello. He's been one of the more hardworking people in the ladder, I'd say, just because of how much work he's had to put in to stay afloat.
Hmm.
And I mean, when your opponent puts up a 230, that makes you feel kind of good, you know? Maybe it's kind of like he feels like there's voodoo at play here at this point. Like the gods are looking down on him and, you know, smiling. If anything, it's for the amount he makes everyone else smile with all of his jokes. But aside from that, Mello has put in all the work and has really just shown what kind of runner he can be. And Coulson just had the potential. I mean, he had the lead the entire time. I think he has a similar issue to where with Charzayt, where one mistake just kind of snowballs into another. But more importantly, he doesn't know how to recover from that quickly. He doesn't know how to keep himself in the run, and clearly it wasn't good enough. Um, and sadly, we won't be seeing Coulson anymore in the ladder. But at the very least, he did put up a very good performance for being a LCQ runner. So at the very least, he does go out, you know, much later than what people might have expected out of him. But I don't even think that was the case. I think this was kind of just a very unfortunate performance. Also, with him having to do the run at like 3 a.m. his time. So I guess I'll just ask you what are your thoughts on this run, and like will we see an even better run out of Mello this next week?
Yeah, I guess I'll start with Coulson just because he is actually now official. Well, okay, technically he's not officially limited. He could do some voodoo magic stuff and make the wild card match, but
True.
I don't think that'll happen, especially with him getting the 230 here. I think he's kind of just pretty much out of the average situation. But in terms of I think he had a really good ladder league. Outside of ladder league, he improved his PEB by like I believe 2.5 minutes, maybe even more, just by getting into ladder league, doing well. So I think on that front, he's been really happy. He provided some cinema entertainment early on in the ladder as well. Unfortunately, these last 2 weeks for Coulson have kind of just been a down week for him, which it happens. And I think this race too, Coulson was in it all the way to the end. He had the lead most of the way, like you were mentioning. And then, it came down to those last few splits where I think it was only 20 seconds into CCT, but had a disaster, and Mello played both the last two splits well. I'm not going to fault him too much on the panel soft block, obviously, so I think it would have been like, 228, maybe 220. I guess, sorry, 227 probably without the panel soft block, so no, like, fault to Coulson here. I think still very, very good ladder league for him, and he can't go out of here disappointed. I think he's done a great job this ladder league. I believe 16th is outperforming his initial seed. I don't actually remember entirely, but very good ladder league otherwise from Coulson. And then I guess to talk about Mello, this has been like obviously this is crazy because he is in a situation where he's guaranteed to be in the ladder in week 5, which I don't think anyone had that on their radar going into ladder league. I mean, right? You
The
think
true
Mello's
believers did. The true
the,
believers did.
the true believers may have. I definitely wasn't one of a Mello true believer to think he would still be here in week 5. I was thinking maybe this would be kind of the week 3 in the ladder seems about the time where Mello might bow out. Maybe a surprise run to week 4, run to week 4, not run 4. But no, he's done it all the way to week 5, and I think something to note about Mello is I don't think it's coincidence that both of his races that he has it's been really close into the final 2 levels, and he has come out on top in both of them because he when it comes down to it in these ladder league matches, you see so like me and Justin, Colton EJP man, me and Jared the other week. It comes down to those last 2 levels. It's going to come down to the last maybe 3 levels you can argue, but like really those last 2 levels are so huge. And every single time Mello has stepped up and put on a really good show in the last two levels, and that is literally the difference. Gamer Olive fumbled the last level in the race against Mello, and Mello played strong, and that's the difference. He's still alive. And then once again this week, Coulson falters on CCT, Mello thrives, gets a PB, and then suddenly Charizard and Daime are getting leapfrogged on top of that. So it just shows how, like, I guess well-rounded Mello is throughout the game. And I think we all knew Mello had the potential for like a PB during the ladder. I honestly was predicting he was going to PB in the LCQ, but it did not come until week 3. But it came at a perfect time for him, and he's gonna have 2 weeks to like. I mean, I don't know what his thoughts are. Maybe you know better, but like, I don't know if he's just like, I'm gonna enjoy the ride from here on out because I'm not supposed to be here, and I'm gonna just try to play my best, or if he's like, maybe I have some. He can connect the dots to find some crazy way to see himself super far into the ladder, maybe even somehow be in rung 1 at some point. I don't know if he has those aspirations. I mean, obviously he's going to want to play as well as he can. I know he's still grinding and whatnot, but I don't know what his thoughts of even being here are because this is kind of crazy. But I guess my main thing on Mello is like, I think it's like finally that progress is getting shown here, and it is a surprise that he's still alive, but it almost isn't because of how much he's been grinding and how much we've seen that potential. And I mean, a 225.59, this did not come without some crazy falters in the middle of that race, right? I think he had like a 508 maul or something absolutely ridiculous. So, right, Mello does have those falters, but still gets a PB. I think it's only a matter of time, in ladder league or not, that he gets something like a 223. And then, 223, not going to be enough for top 8, but, he could potentially send some runners home. Like Coulson, he wasn't really maybe supposed to lose this match. Now, EJP, man, Charizard, Daime, two of these people, maybe not supposed to get out in the hands of Mellowbro. They basically just knocked him out. So, maybe he'll send a couple other people home in a surprise fashion. I was almost about to ask you what you think of his next race, but that's for predictions. I guess that's my reaction. I think Mello's done phenomenally, and I think, while he's not like a crazy force to be reckoned with, I think he can definitely cause some more upsets and maybe knock a few people out that, might have been a surprise.
He really is the tortoise in this situation against all these hares. That's all I'll say about that.
And I will throw us over. And actually, dude, we recapped that for a long time, but we're actually, that's totally fine. I'll throw us over to our power rankings here, which I guess, to be fair, the power
Sweet.
rankings section will be a lot shorter.
Yeah.
Just because no, this is the right picture. Nope, this is the wrong picture. Technical issues on the ladder side. This is me not double checking things. I have it up here. Give me.
It's our first day. Don't worry, guys.
Yeah, this is my first video, guys. Don't blame me. Definitely click to week 3 instead of week 4.
That looks right, I believe.
Okay, yeah, so let's pretend that didn't happen. I won't speak on anything 17 and below. Obviously, Coulson does bow out here, so he is going to take our 16th spot. And then let's talk, I guess I'll group it as a group of 3 here, because I think Daime is almost... I kept grouping him with everyone above, but I feel like it's kind of hard to call him a fringe contender at this point because he's in the bottom rung with no good performances so far. And I think he definitely has the potential to have those good performances, but his opportunities have basically ran out. So just to group these people right here, Charizard, I'm actually moving Mello above Charizard this week just because, I mean, simply Mello got a PB and a 225. Charizard hasn't put up a time that good this entire tournament. So, I mean, I think Mello's on an upward trajectory. Charizard's in a place of question because he's in the bottom rung against 2 runners who have been consistently a little bit better than him in this tournament. So Charizard's in a place where he's going to have to finally, like similar with Daime, going to have to find that peak performance in the last week. Well, not his last, I mean, it could not be his last week, but he's in a very tough situation. So I'm putting him at 15th. Mello, I'm going to jump up to 14th, just like I was mentioning. All the things, I guess, everything that I have said previous about Mello, kind of my reasoning why he has actually jumped up a spot. Maybe you can even argue he's above Daime, but I think it's a little too much considering Daime's gotten a 223, 225 that was better than Mello's tournament. And he wasn't on a setup for the race he did really badly. So I'm going to keep Daime at 13th. And I guess for these bottom 3, would you change the order at all?
I think this order is honestly kind of perfect in terms of how these runners are performing. I would maybe even put Mello in front of Daime at this point, given the trajectory of his runs going just down, down, down these last 3 weeks. The thing about Mello is that he's just a very consistent player. So in terms of how he handles situations, in terms of the strats he uses and just how not risky they are, I think, given how Charizard and Daime have performed so far, I don't really see how Melo isn't better, but
Mhm.
it might just be my bias of, just enjoying the guy as a person. Yeah, I think if anything, I would think the rankings are perfect. I don't think I would change anything.
Yeah, and I think that group is pretty known at this point. And I'll move on to this one, which
Right.
is I think this whole grouping of people, and I guess I'll group it right now as between EJP men. Actually, I'll just rattle it off because it's so hard because you could almost include on my next slide. I have Jared at the 6. It's almost you can include
Mhm.
Jared in here because Jared's been so wild. But for now, I'll leave him out. I'll just group it as these people on this slide. EJP men all the way to myself, and I think these are going to be the people that right at the end of the day, will they make it into the top 8? Will they not? I have EJP man at 12, which I think you could definitely justify him over Colton given that entire performance, and I think he deserved to beat Colton by a lot. I'm just power rankings see the times, and it's hard to like. I think EJP man, if we're talking about future potential and stuff, could be above Colton, but the thing is Colton does have a 219. Colton just needs to figure it out. I'm gonna put EJP man below him simply because he just got the worst time. I think if he had finished out Bespin with a better time, I probably would have jumped him up. But power rankings are kind of weird in the sense of I want to make it as, correlated to the final times as possible as well. So I'm going to put EJP Man at the 12 and Colton at the 11. And then I'm going to put you at the 10 because once again, you not only got better times than Colton and EJP Man this week, are on the upward trajectory. But I mean, once again, yeah, could have been a 220, could have been a low 220. So I think you're firmly in the 10. I'm gonna rank Colton and EJP Man a little bit lower than you, which I think is a very interchangeable Colton and EJP man. But I think you're pretty solidified at the 10 in my mind. And then you have Justin at the 9, who I think, it's hard to rank Justin because he had that really bad first week, but he's been getting better. And he's had 2 solid weeks in a row with two 220s. So I think the 9 is fair. I think I'm almost being harsh with Laser, putting him at the 8 just because two Godfraud misses, monitor issues. How much of that time is really representative of Laser's skill? It's hard to say because we know how good he can be. So I'm gonna keep him above Justin simply because he's had two 219s still, right? He's still at two 219s, and most of his time was because of things mostly like Godfraud's obviously in your control, but monitor stuff. I'm gonna keep him above Justin. I'm not gonna keep him above me. Maybe a little bit of personal bias in that, but I still think like the 219 I got week one. I think and the 220s and 221s are kind of like I think my like floor and what I'll get. I think is gonna put me above someone like Laser and Justin who have both put up a 226 at this point, which is a little concerning. I think it would take like the ultimate disaster for me to get a 226. I think my floor is still significantly higher than where the other runners in this grouping are, and maybe my ceiling as well. But that's kind of how I group this. But I think this could be grouped in so many different ways. And I'll throw it over to you. I don't know how much you've thought about this since you might have a ton of time to, but I guess how would you group these 6? Because there's a lot of ways of doing it. And if you do want to include Jared, feel free to include Jared as well.
Yeah, honestly, it's really hard to like tell for sure with this 6. If anything, I might put Laser above you, and that
Mm-hmm.
might be just where it sits. Yeah, I don't really know how else I'd order this. I think, obviously this is kind of just based off of this last week, which is kind of how the format just works already.
Mm-hmm.
So if we were not to look at anything beforehand, but also yeah, it's hard. It's so hard. It's like I'm flustered trying to think of how I would order it, but I think the way it's put is pretty well put. I don't think I'd change anything up here, because obviously, if we were to include Jared here, like he just had a really really good time. So I honestly I can't really see him being down here at all, but I could also see you being ahead of him at the same time. It's so hard to say, but I think this is honestly a really fair assessment of our rankings and how we'll stack against each other in this upcoming week.
Yeah, and I guess this section is really just like I said it before and last week. This is going to change so much as the
Yeah.
ladder continues because these are the runners that are going to be in it most likely in those last
Hmm.
few weeks. It could like literally the last 2 weeks could be these set of 6 runners. So it's just so hard to like this is just going to be constantly changing. It's so hard to
Yeah.
keep a constant opinion. And like you said, it's really hard to rank this because I think the heaviest weight is right that previously what just happened. And then I think there's still a good weight on like what has previously happened in the previous weeks, but then it's like how do you factor in their potential? Because obviously that does factor in, but then it's like but that doesn't really, power rankings might not do that because, right, it's hard to tell because you do want to factor that in. Like
You're right.
EJP man is someone I really want to put above Colton because we literally just saw him almost get a 220. But it's like I can't because I don't really want to try to take potential into it too much. It's so hard to rank in this section. And I think the next page will be a little bit easier than what we just did, which is our top six. Anorak, I'm slotting in the 3 slot, obviously, as he's going to be qualifying third. I'm just going to keep it going as once you qualify, you've locked yourself in that spot. It's a little ambiguous to talk about, like, yeah, Evan just got record. Shout out to Evan, by the way, for getting record. But I wouldn't put him up with Dragon because he got record. I think Dragon performed as best as he could for 1 week. He can't change anything. Stuff that happens outside the ladder, I don't really want to take into account in these power rankings too much. But anyways, moving on to our grouping of 3 here. Jared, I'm moving all the way up to 6. I think he finally realizes his potential. I don't think, he's not up there that the consistency of Zach and Bricko and how they've gone on so far. But he's definitely, I think, a fair spot for him as 6 after he, 217 is a time that no one on the bottom page has even gotten close to touching. The previous page. And then Bricko, I'm moving him below Zach. I think this was obviously a big underperformance for him, but I think he was, excuse me, I think he was barely above Zach last week in my mind. I mean, he barely beat him in the other race. And I think this week with the big underperformance from Bricko and the Zach having a mid race, but still getting a low 219 is going to slide him up ahead of Bricko for me. And I'll turn it over to you, but I have a feeling you have a very similar list here.
Yeah. Once again, it's kind of hard to like disagree with this list. I think because we're kind of in the middle of everything, we've we've had 3 samples of everyone's like potential and their performance. So it's kind of just like it's pretty clean cut, I would say, in terms of just how people are going to stack up against each other. Zach has been obviously the favorite, I think, going into the tournament. If I'm not mistaken, he was first going into the season. So the fact that he's at the top makes complete sense. Bricko just having one disaster and then Jared having a really good run. I don't really see. I don't see it any other way. Like it just
Mhm.
makes sense like this. So
Awesome. And now I guess I'll turn it over to our prediction section. Let me pull that up real quick. Get us to our theory. And I guess we'll start from the bottom up. And actually, I'll just mention it now because, yeah. I mean, we're doing totally fine on time. I think I'll flip
mhm,
it from last week I did predictions. I think this week, I think it's a perfect time to start like a little segment that just looks at the wild card stuff because it's getting really relevant now.
for
And,
sure.
people who are trying to contest for the wild card or maybe initially try to contest for the wild card are either in positions where they might qualify in the next few weeks or might get eliminated. So, very, very interesting things. But first, we'll do predictions. We'll start with this bottom rung EJP Man, Charizite, Daime. And I don't think people might, like, maybe a few people might have, like, Daime in this race, but EJP Man, I think, is a little bit surprising to see him in the bottom rung at this point of the ladder so early. Um, but yeah, it's really hard for me to see this race going. Oh, I guess before I say that, I just want actually I want to do a little tidbit about Mellowgrow actually being in the rung above because I've been talking about the stat so much. I was very curious. Will there be a non-Godfraud player that beats any Godfraud player in this tournament? And Mellowgrow is actually the last Godfraud player in this entire tournament, and he will now just like officially beat a Godfraud player because I was going to talk
Yeah.
about Godfraud in this match. Everyone does Godfraud. Mello, the last non-Godfraud user in the tournament, going to be outliving at least 2 Godfraud users. Um, but I think this match, like I hate to say it because it's such a crazy like this match could be determined at Godfraud because all 3 of these runners, if I look at everyone on the ladder, I'm most scared about these 3 in Godfraud. Like we've seen mistakes from all 3 of them in Godfraud at this point in the tournament, and I just don't know how it's going to shape up. I almost feel the most confident with Charizite on it, but then again, once again, Charizite hasn't been able to make hold any of his leads if he gets him out of Godfraud. We saw it in as early as the LCQ and as far as lately as last week. I don't think I can pick Charizite here as a winner or someone surviving. I think I'm gonna have to almost not say safe, but I think EJP Man with what he proved last week and Daime still hasn't figured it out. I think I gotta go EJP Man to win, and I think Daime is actually gonna make this a close race. I don't think it's gonna be a cut and dry. Daime is out, Charizite's out. I think Daime will make it a close race, but I think Charizite it's a little bit too much for him to chew here with 2 runners who I think are a little bit better than him right now. And he's gonna have to see out that potential of like a big PB just to have a chance here. So I'm gonna go EJP Man, Daime, Charizard, and I'll throw it over to you as to what you think the order is and kind of why.
I flipped my 2 and 3 actually. I think Charizard is gonna have a better performance than Daime. I just don't know that Daime has really had it. This ladder. It's really hard to say because obviously Charizard and Daime, given that I raced against them last week and how they performed, it's kind of hard to tell. But with these two, I think Charizard has more of a dog in the fight than Daime, and I think Charizard might actually make it interesting. I don't think he's
Mm-hmm.
gonna just like just flop over. I think he's gonna actually give it a really good give a really good showing. But EJP is probably just gonna come out on top here. I don't see how he doesn't. Um, yeah, that's basically all I can really say about that run.
Oh, and I guess it doesn't matter for second and third in this race, but I guess I'll have make sure you mark down your picks. So it's what we do at the end is just like
Right.
go through
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
potential leapfrogs, and I think yours might
Mhm.
end up being a little bit different than mine.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I guess yeah, I would just before I move on from that race, I did say like what might falter EJP Man here. I think EJP Man wins this race if he gets a good God Fraud. I mean, there's so much more to the run, right? But he's been
Mhm.
showing that high potential everywhere else. If he has a bad God Fraud, I think is the one way it snowballs is the one way he gets out of this one. But I mean, you never know. Diamond and Charizard have shown potential in non-ladder league settings, but in ladder league, it's just been sort of a disaster for both of them so far. And I'll move on to run three now. Between it's a kind of an interesting matchup. Like I don't. This is another one where it was like the Justin Daime Coulson match. I feel like it's very similar vibes to
Yeah.
that Justin Colton Mellowbro. And I mean, I think if anyone has looked at the predictions tab, which I'll show it off real quick, I think this might be an all-time high point count for Millivro, 36.36. I don't think anyone has been worth that many points in ladder league history, predictions history. This would like if
Wow.
Mellifro won this race. I mean a lot would have to happen, but that would be the most insane. That would be the most insane upset. It would be bigger than the Dragon Frost upset. It would be bigger than any
Oh yeah.
upset ever if Mello won this race. Because I think the problem is for Mello is if this was a one-on-one, you never know. It could happen, right? It could be that crazy dragon, but it's two runners ahead of him that have to make all these big mistakes. And right, Colton, 223 seems like a down week for him. And if Melo got a 223 that would be like an insanely good PB for him. So it's just really hard for me to, move Melo. And he's not doing God Fraud, right? I think the way that Melo Bro somehow comes up with a win is a huge God Fraud disaster for both the other runners because, right, the other runners want to win, right? Leapfrog is very relevant here. You go to run one, so they're not going to be holding back on strategies. They're not going to be holding back. So if they have an absolute disaster at the start, that is, I think, Melo's one way. Unfortunately, though, I think I'm going to put him at third here. I just, I can't see him making that noise. And as much as I want to go different in this match, Justin has just been so good lately, and Justin is a really good tournament runner. It like obviously he hasn't won a tournament yet, but there's a reason why he's like almost in every single final, almost every single grand final. I mean, and he's just consistent. And if he puts up a 220 here, it will take. I'm willing to bet that Justin's consistent run, like a 220, is going to beat Colton's run. It would take like a really good PV level run from Colton to beat it, which is definitely possible, but I'll bet on the opposite happening. I bet that Colton will get second here. Um, and that's kind of my order 1, 2, 3 down the line here. And I guess I'll throw it over to you. What do you think the order of this is going to end up being?
Yeah, exact same. I'm a mellow believer, but at this point, it's just a matter of how long can he last. And
Mm,
I don't know that we're gonna see him much longer in this season. But at least I don't think he's gonna be that bad. I think he's kind of going into this knowing that the other two have all the pressure being stacked up against each other. So the fact that he's at least, going up against a titan of this game and a very, very good up and comer in terms of Colton, I think he definitely is not going to be that much in the race, but he definitely has a shot to at least, potentially maybe see some disaster happen that gives him the chance to, live another day beyond next week, but maybe most likely not.
mm,
um, but in terms of Colton and Justin, I think, like you said, with Colton's time, his PB, or not his PB, but his last week's performance, in terms of that, being stacked up against Melo, like I don't know that he's gonna do that bad again. I don't know that he's gonna give Melo that much of a chance. And then in terms of Justin, or sorry, in terms of how Justin and Colton are gonna go, like I just don't know exactly how Colton's gonna play going into this. There's definitely a lot of nerves playing against someone like Justin. So the fact that Colton is, this far down against someone as good as Justin is, I don't know how his nerves are gonna play into this. But given that Colton has had this history of having disasters that turn into a lot of time loss, if I feel like if he makes one bad step, he's definitely gonna crumble. So I just see Justin coming out on top in terms of this rung. I don't see it going pretty much any other way, but you never know.
Yeah, and I almost see Colton maybe even ahead of Justin through the first 3 episodes, but I think
Definitely.
Justin will be like close enough where it's like one mistake by Colton he can pounce on, and that's the thing,
Hmm.
like you mentioned, mistakes are bound to happen, especially in ladder league, no reset settings. Where once Colton makes one, if he can't, real like recover right away, I think Justin just pounces on this race and ends up taking over. Uh, so yeah, totally in agreement with your analysis there. I'll move up to rung two, which is actually we first time I think I've ever done a laterally like recap and had the other runner in the same rung as me between myself, you, and Flaming Laser, which is I guess rung one right has to kind of be the race of the week just because the name value and like that's a big race and anyone could take it. But I think this one is another one where truly anyone could take it, right? I think me and Laser might have the slight edge on paper, but obviously last week you just proved that you can put up a 220, maybe even better in a ladder league match, which is very scary for me as someone who only has one time better than that currently. And then Laser, who had a absolute just like weird. I don't want to. It was a disaster, but it's like, can you even call it a disaster? It might be worse than that. Laser just with an absolute weird run last week. I don't know how to even judge him based on that because will we see an immediate bounce back to the 219s or will we see something somewhere in the middle between 219 and 226? I think this race, especially because it's late in the week, there's more prep time, and I think this trend is kind of kept up for ladder league. Maybe I'm a little off on this, but I think the later into the week the race has been, the better quality the race has been, right? The earlier ones, not as much prep time. You're kind of just throwing in a little bit earlier in the week. It's a weekday, right? People are busy on weekdays, so it's, you have less time to really prepare before the matches. So I think the quality of this race might be probably the highest of the week. I'm gonna go. That's almost why I want to. Obviously, and I fully. If you want to pick yourself in this race, I'm fully for it because I fully promote believing in yourself, which I will actually shout out or not shout out. This is like an opposite of a shout out. Call out Anorak because he didn't believe himself on the thing last week, and then he picked himself anyways. So it's like, come on, pick what you believe in the videos. So I'm gonna go myself first, and this is no like biased because you're here. I genuinely think you could put up like something like a 220 next week, and that would be a solid second place time. So I'm actually going to put you in second here because I think you're just on the upper trajectory right now. And I think, well, you and Laser are on actually the most opposite possible trajectories at the same time. I still obviously am super high on Laser, and I think Laser's going to be a really good competitor for top eight potentially. But I think just the trajectory right now is in your favor. And Laser also, mind you, is on a week long trip right now, so he's coming back from that.
Mm, right.
I'm not saying he's gonna be like jet lagged, but he's not gonna have as much time to immediately get right back into the swing of things. So I'm gonna go 1, 2, 3 like this. And I will take no offense if you put me last. By the way, I'll throw it over to you.
So actually, it's just me and you flipped in terms of your
Mhm.
picks. Like like you said, like I gotta believe in myself. I
Yeah.
fully believe that I have I have what it takes to actually win this race. I'm not entirely sure that it's gonna go the way that I want it to. However, given, what happened last week in terms of how I performed, I it didn't like one massive mistake didn't stop me from playing probably
Hmm.
my best ever, like in terms of a race. So the fact that I can have a performance like that definitely gives me the confidence that I can pull it off. In terms of you, like in terms of you and Laser, it's kind of hard to choose between you two. However, I definitely think that you are the more consistent player just because you have so many runs under your belt compared to Laser at this point. in terms of the last month or so.
Hmm.
Laser deciding to really only do runs just for the league itself. He doesn't
Yeah.
really do any attempts outside of it, which, given what happened in Godfraud last week, it definitely does play a role. I think if any major like mistake or technical error occurs during the race, it can kind of just throw him off his whole game.
Yeah.
So I definitely can see you not only just skill wise, but in terms of random events happening outside of the race, I can definitely see you pulling ahead of him. But I have to believe it myself. So
Yeah.
I
For sure.
fully believe I'm gonna be the first.
Yeah, and I mean, like, especially like I know Godfraud, like in terms of like Rung 4, I was talking about how much Godfraud impacts that, which it does, but Godfraud does that much more for rungs like 1 and 2, for example, where I think like right,
Hmm.
the quality of like people are going to hit it more often in rung 1 and rung 2, but then that means when you do miss it, it's just that much greater an impact because it's way less likely that someone's gonna give up a lead of like 2-3 minutes, right? Depending on
Right.
1 to 3 minutes, depending how big the disaster is. So I mean, Godfraud obviously going to play a huge factor in this race, but I think you and Laser are all three like relatively strong Godfraud players. I mean, I don't know about you. It's hard to like put a percentage to it. It really depends on the day, but it's like if you're just
Yeah.
doing Godfraud, what are the percent chances that you just get through it, fully without? And I think for all of us, it's probably over 50%. But it's like well, everyone hit that 50%. Will someone have like a disaster like last week with Laserhead going backwards versus like you missed lap one, missed the pause, or missed the hype boost, come back in? It's hard to tell, if with bigger disaster, right? Smaller disaster, I think anyone could come back from. But yeah, I'm totally with you with like, I think you can win this race just because literally with all of our times, like you might be like look lower on the leaderboard, but it's like our times in ladder league are really close together, and genuinely one swing of one level could change the entire race. So yeah, I think that will be a like I think it'll be the race of the week, even though with the name value in rung one, I think just how early in the week rung one is might throw off people a little bit, right? Zach hasn't been playing because he's been hosting this week long trip that Laser's been on, so he might not be playing as much. I think they're doing co-op, which is the most he's played, which is a lot different. And I guess
That is different.
I'll shoot us over to Rogue One, which will be Bricko, Zach, and Jared. And this is like I think obviously going to be a really really good race. And you know what? Oh, I want it's so like I'm in my brain picking this, thinking about this as I I'm gonna go a little bold. Do I want to go bold? I want to pick Jared so bad. I want to pick Jared so bad. He had such a good race last week, and I just want to
If
pick him because the momentum. Oh, if you have what you have here, like
Yeah,
already in
yeah.
your
I was
head,
gonna
just go
say
ahead.
if you want time to think about it,
Yeah,
I do have mine. Like I
yeah.
have everything kind of picked out. I kind of just don't think about it too much. I'm just like, okay, like
Mm-hmm.
who do I think is gonna do it? Um, so going into this week, I mean, it's three heavy hitters. I it's a boring pick, but I do have to go with Zach here.
And
I
honestly,
just
it's not even a boring pick with how laterally doing. So
Yeah.
it's
Mm-hmm.
how's
I
it?
mean, we're week 4 and Zach is still yet to see um what's it called? He still has yet to qualify. It's kind of insane that we're even talking about Zach at this point because it's like he should already be in it, is what everyone is thinking. But just to add more pressure to him, like I do think he's going to be the one to win. I don't really see it going any other way, just given his talent and his ability to pull off great runs. It's just a matter of can he stay in the run and not make some weird mistakes here and there. Obviously, week 1 with Coruscant. Week 2, I believe, was the Jabba's incident, if I'm not wrong. And then,
Yes,
or
yeah.
maybe it was, yeah. I don't remember what happened this last week, but obviously he put on a better show than
Mm-hmm.
you and Justin did. So it's just a matter of, I think, him just feeling confident. And I think given that he had the best episode 5 in a run ever, after I think I mentioned his interview earlier in the video where he basically said like he kind of just let go mentally of all this pressure and just played. I think he has a much better mental going into it, especially having had people over at his house. I think that the happiness of being around other people, whether it be Lego speedrunning people or just friends in general or just people in your life that make you happy, I think that does play a role. So I
Hmm.
think Zach is going to play much more confident going into this week. In terms of Bricko and Jared, I do have Bricko probably just barely edging out Jared in this one. I don't. It could go either way. I mean, it's so hard to pick with these two. Um, I think Bricko just having that one falter with Godfraud definitely maybe rattled him a little bit. Um, and then in terms of Jared, he just has probably a really good confidence going into it. However, I do think that anything could happen, and I could just see Bricko just beating out Jared just by ever so slight, this ever so slightest bit. Like this could be a very close race, and I could see anyone taking it, but that's my three. So how are your three coming along here?
Yeah, I think I made up my mind, and as you were talking through it, I pretty much agree with I think your talk on Zach has convinced me that I really want to pick Jared, but I think I have to go with Zach here because the whole situation with Zach, and I genuinely think that these 219, 218s are just such underperformances from him. And if he puts up a normal Zach performance, 217 and like a no reset, which is like insane to say, I think he just wins, right? Even if Jared's on a really good run like last week, it's going to be very hard for him to beat that. So I'm going to go Zach. Finally puts together a good run this week. And I think I'm going to go with it's not really that big of an upset just because of how close these runners are. I'm going to go Jared over Bricko. And I think it's just a momentum thing where Bricko's coming off a bad race and Jared's coming off a really good race. And I think the momentum is going to play a little bit of a factor. And I think Jared's going to have a good run. And I think Jared, honestly, is the best early game player. Like, Zach is really good. I mean, well, obviously, Dragon and Evan are really good. I guess Evan's not really an early game player, but like, Zach and Dragon, two really good runners, obviously. But I think Jared is just better at the early game than them. I think he's the best early game runner in the community. And I think he's going to have a good early game. And he's that momentum type runner where he'll keep chugging on. But I think Zach will just have that edge on the back half where and Zach will be close to Jared, right? He has a really good early game. So I think Zach will win. I think I'll take Jared in second, and I think Bricko mentally, right? I don't know how much he watches the stream, but like if Zach and Jared are on really good early games, it's gonna be hard for him to kind of mentally get it all together because all right, I'm behind. I gotta keep playing well, and Zach and Jared just aren't giving up time, sort of situation. Which actually, this is funny because I guess my scenario I'm looking at it sets up a crazy situation next week where someone like Bricko, who was like maybe a more of a favorite to qualify earlier, is in rung two, and that sets up a me, Jared, Wazzip top rung, which would mean one of us qualifies earlier. Mind you, that would be obviously a crazy good opportunity for you to qualify. But on the flip side, it's like, oh, you have to play Zach round one if you qualify there. But you know what? I think I'm not even thinking of top eight matchups at this point, and I think you are as well. It's like I just want to get there, sort of idea. And I think I'm in the same boat. It's like get there as early as possible, right? If you play Zach, you play Zach. If you play Dragon,
Yeah.
you play Dragon. It's just it sucks, but it's better to be there than not. So I think this like scenario would put a really really interesting qualification scenario together. Anyways, I guess I'll go over my leapfrog situations real
Hmm.
quick, and then I'll throw it over to yours. Um,
Sweet.
but honestly, and I know I said this last week, but with how prevalent leapfrogs have been, I think finally we're gonna have a week that cools down on them. I think there's gonna be zero leapfrogs this week. I
Mm.
think EJP Man will put up a really good run, but I think Colton is gonna have a good a low 221, mid 221, and I think that'll just be enough to beat EJP Man. I think it'll be really close, but I think Colton will just do enough to avoid the leapfrog here. And then same thing with yourself. I think both of you and Justin are going to put up somewhere in the 220s, but I think once again, I think you'll just avoid getting leapfrogged as well. And I guess, yeah, I'll throw it over to yours. Flipped is. Sorry. Actually, the
Uh,
bottom run doesn't matter. It is. Honestly,
yeah,
the only thing I need to change is
it's
this.
just me and yeah.
And then,
So
yeah, you can talk.
in terms of my leapfrogs, I do have EJP
Mhm.
leapfrogging in front of Colton. I just don't. It's so hard to say because I could see it also being a situation where there's absolutely zero leapfrogs, like you said.
Mhm.
But I could also see it where Colton just falters pretty badly and EJP man just picks up on the slack basically.
Mhm.
In terms of that, that's like my first leapfrog, and then my second one, I could see as with me being first, you second, and Laser three. I could see Justin also
Mhm.
leapfrogging into five. I don't know if I want to say that there's going to be a leapfrog, but I have it down, but I don't know if I agree with it because now that you bring it up, like, yeah, there could just be zero leapfrogs despite this being the most leapfrog heavy season so far. Um, I'm gonna s- I'm gonna say yes. I'm gonna say there's gonna be a leapfrog with
Which
Justin,
would, once again, that would
because
set up another crazy qualifying scenario.
yeah, because
Look,
the
look at
way
rung two in your scenario. This is
oh, and
crazy.
then
Me, Brico, EJP, man.
what's it called? And then Bricko would be in rung one with us actually.
Oh, yeah.
So
Sorry,
that
sorry,
would
sorry.
yeah. Not that it really matters
Yeah,
that
yeah.
much, but
This is I just like I
but
like to draw it out for the fun
yeah,
of
no,
it.
I understand. But in terms of that, like in terms of how I have to beat you in laser, I need you guys to kind of mess up somewhere. I
Hmm.
don't know where that would be, but I in my head, I feel like it's either I need to play perfect, according to my standards, or you guys need to make a mistake somewhere.
Yeah, and
So
I
with
wouldn't say
that,
perfect. Don't say
yeah,
perfect because I mean obviously we've seen you on that pace. I just
yeah,
think I
yeah,
guess my reason for the leapfrog not happening,
mhm,
and obviously you might envision our different races. I just think the quality of our race is going to be really high, just because of the
definitely.
preparation time. Obviously, laser might not have that preparation time, and that's why I kind of put it a little bit lower. But I think we both have adequate preparation time, and I think usually the end of the week has provided those higher quality matches. I guess higher quality in terms of like people are playing well.
Right. Yeah,
The matches where people don't play well are still cinema. um,
I just think in this situation, the way in my head, it's just like Justin can play better than all three of us. It's just a
mhm.
matter of will he, which I could maybe see it happening. So that's where I'll leave it at
Yeah,
for now,
definitely good.
or else we're gonna go on for another 30 minutes.
Yeah,
So
yeah, and I don't even know how I want to do this because I want to just quickly go over the wildcard standings because it is like relevant. Like I think it's very relevant now. I haven't like thought
mhm.
in my head how I want to do a wildcard segment, but I think the best thing is just like I'll just throw out my opinions. In terms of like what the potential like who can still get a fastest time, who can still get the fastest average, and I think in my mind I almost want to like block out Rico, Jared, Zach because I feel like those three, and I think they're actually the first three in both categories, will probably auto qualify, and then
They're
that
pretty
would fill
set, yeah.
up seed three or four, five, six, and then you would have someone in this getting seed seven, and then two people getting the wild card match. And I guess first I'll talk about fastest time, and I think for me, like when I think of myself, I think I'm and I would be if right. Sorry, I'm yapping so much. Zach, Burko, Jared. If they qualify right, that and I somehow don't get that seventh spot, I'm currently sitting in fastest time, fastest average, both of them. I feel like I would be very comfortably making that wild card match, which I think would kind of be a bad scenario for anyone else because that kind of means that I would be potentially taking a wild card spot from someone below. Um, but I think more I'm secured by my fastest time. Oh, it's kind of hard to tell because 2:20:26 average is good because it's like a whole minute ahead of the next person laser, which it's hard to get your average up. But I mean, 2:19:11 is a good time for the ladder. I mean, I don't know. I don't need to overanalyze what I feel more secure about. This is just like ripping this section off the top of my head. But I think like, right, you and EJP man both showed like that potential to potentially get that fastest time. But Laser with the 2:19:26 feels like really hard to beat in that position.
Oh, definitely,
Like
yeah.
Justin definitely could, but I feel like for Colton, yourself, EJP man, it's gonna be hard to beat that fastest time. And I guess I don't know you, but maybe that fastest average, especially with Laser getting the bad time this week and Justin's average isn't very good. I think that's a much more attainable way to the path to the wild card match. I guess I'll throw it over to you
Definitely.
just because you're like one of those runners who right is in this position where you're a little bit on the outside looking in, but then again you're within striking distance. I guess. Do you think you have a better
Yeah.
time with or better chance with fastest time or fastest average?
I would definitely say average. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of what everyone has said my path has been since the very start, and I don't disagree. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's just I don't know. This being my first ladder league, it's like I don't know if I'm gonna be able to put on my best performance each week, but I can at least put on a very consistent performance each week, and I've only gotten better each time. So if I can just have like a breakout 220 maybe, if not better, like a 219, then that would kind of just set me on pace for having a really good average, especially stacked up against because at this point, like you said, Laser is likely, assuming that you qualify, Laser's likely going to be the one that takes that fastest time slot. So it's basically assuming that Colton and EJP and Daime kind of fizzle out. That would be my chance to strike with the fastest average. Because I think I could, but we won't know. We simply don't
Mm-hmm.
know until the very end. So I don't really know, but I think average probably, yeah, average is definitely my path. at this
Yeah,
point,
I'm
assuming that I don't somehow miraculously qualify before then.
yeah. Which I mean, hey, this scenario you might have a chance or two because, I
It
mean, look,
could
you're gonna
happen.
be in rung one in this potential week, which even oh wait, third place does demote you to rung two, but still, like
Yeah,
I don't know, there's still
there's chances.
like even if you in theory were in and right in this scenario you're playing Justin and Brico, you could get second over Justin for sure. Being in like I guess what I found valuable in the past is being in rung one of week six is so valuable because even if you
Hmm.
get last, there's the second and third are the same in rung one week six. So you basically just get a free roll race week seven
Right. Hmm.
guaranteed. Obviously with the chance of qualifying week six. So I think, getting in that spot is very important for a lot of people. But I guess what I was gonna say is I'm so glad that the ladder has turned out where fastest average is so up for grabs at this point. And there's still 4 weeks left, and it'll be really interesting how it factors in when people get eliminated, right? Since in theory, people will get better times as the ladder goes on, right? Because people are improving. So then with people like, for example, Daime, EJP Man, Colton, yourself, if you guys get eliminated early, that might just completely shoot your chances out the window. Or maybe it could help. I probably not. Right? I think you're thinking you want to be in as long as possible. Obviously, every race you're in, you get the potential to get the fastest time. And I think it's super valuable. Even if you were to somehow jump Justin in fastest time, that 2:20:08, then suddenly if Laser could qualify. Well, actually, I guess me and Laser can't qualify. But even just jumping up those standings is so important because you never know what could happen. And right,
Right.
even if you do get that time better than Justin, your average is suddenly going to be really good. Which right, that's the more realistic path because I mean, right now you're sitting, you get a 220, that average is going, and everyone gets their average. Let's just say you're jumping, you might even jump Laser. So very
That's
very
very true.
interesting.
Yeah.
I'll have to like think out how I want to do the wildcard segment because it's good. Right now it's not as relevant. Still a lot of weeks left, but I definitely it's getting there where it's starting to
Important to
become very
know for
important.
sure.
Yeah. Uh, but yeah, I think that'll wrap it up. I don't know if you have any final words, Wazip. Obviously, I'll say
Um,
good luck on our race.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say good luck to everyone that's participating in this week, as well as, I just look forward to see how everyone performs, and also thank you for having me on. This was awesome. I love yapping about ladder league, so
Yeah, it's
appreciate
so
you for
fun.
inviting me on. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. I think it was an awesome episode. And yeah, I'll end it here. I will to make sure you tune in next week. That'll be another fun one. I'll try to think. I promise, guys. I'll think of a more realistic way of doing the wild card segment. I want to do it, but this was just completely on the fly. So, all right. Thank you guys, and we'll see you next week.